What is a blessing? That's the question. Well, a lot of times that we think that a blessing is going to be something that's good or something that we feel like is something that's good in the world, in the eyes of the world. And a lot of times God doesn't bring us a blessing in the way that we would think that it would. And so a great example of this is Paul and Silas praising in the prison. Paul and Silas are in this prison for healing a girl, and the masters were not very happy about it. And they're sitting in the prison, and they're praising God in the prison, even though it's a bad situation. And we would look at it from the outside and be like, hey, that's not a good thing. Paul and Silas were praising God for it, and they were singing praises to him. And I would call that a blessing, wouldn't you?
I would totally call that a blessing. Absolutely.
And so a lot of times a blessing isn't just something that we think is good or something that we see as good, but rather something that's good in God's plan. And a lot of times our plan does not always line up with God's plan. And so I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you and talk about the Beatitudes. This is what biblically God says, blessed are those who blank. And so this is really the answer to what is a blessing.
Yeah, so this is in Matthew 5. I'm going to start with verse 2, and then we're going to go through all of them. And this is also Jesus talking, so it's in red. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you, falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you.
So
Wow.
Blessed is just another word for blessed, right? And so what we see here is that it says blessed are the, and then it goes into a blank of different things. But what's interesting to me, I don't know if you recognize this, but they're all like negative things through our eyes. Blessed are the poor, blessed are those who mourn, blessed are those who are meek, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Like all those things are bad. And then it goes on to say, blessed are those who are persecuted for my name. So people who are taking beatings, people who are, being martyred for the name of Jesus Christ. And those people are blessed in the eyes of the Lord. And so I kind of get my wheels turning as to why is that a blessing? Why are these bad things a blessing? What do you think about that? Like, what do you think is the blessing in the bad things?
I think it's also the way humans look at things, like from a fleshly, worldly perspective, and then from God's perspective of like, we view these things as bad because we have this worldly perspective of what's good, what makes me happy, what do I want to do, and all this selfishness that we have. And then I think in this, the blessing is that we have God simply. And whatever bad comes with it, it's like, no, it's still a blessing because you got God on your side. And that's the blessing in the trials. Like it says, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake or for his sake. Like, sure, I'm being persecuted and stuff, but it's for his sake. I'm doing it for him. And that's the blessing in my opinion. What do you think?
I 100% agree with you. That's exactly where I was going, is that God himself is actually the blessing that we're getting. And so anything that God is doing through our lives, we can say, hey, glory be to God, because it's going to work out for his favor. Like Romans 8:28 says, everything works for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And so a good thing can be a blessing for sure. But a bad thing can also be a blessing, as we just read through Paul and Silas. And there's many other things in the Bible that's like, I think of Job. Job, he goes through all this terrible stuff just to come out on the other side and come through and be so faithful to God and be full of faith towards God. And he never once turned his back on him or anything. And I find that so encouraging. But we were getting to the point of God is the blessing. And what's interesting is in Psalms 23, I want to read this real quick. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies, and you anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. What I see out of this passage in Psalms is David saying, the Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is my rock, my salvation. He's pouring his heart out to God, and he's saying, if I have you, I have everything. And then it goes on to say, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. And I would see that as a bad thing. You're walking through a valley where you could get killed by, wild animals or whatever may be there. But he's saying, I have you, I have everything. Instead of, I have good things, I have everything. And so it's just this heart posture of really wanting to cling to God and cling to all of his purpose and his plan. And that's kind of where the blessing comes. And I think that when we start to put on the mind of God and the heart of God and start to understand what he's trying to do on this earth, because we know it's not our final destination, we start to embrace the suffering. We start to embrace being persecuted. I think of the disciples after Jesus had already gone up to heaven, and all of them but one was brutally murdered or martyred. And they're like still not denying Jesus rising from the grave. That's powerful. And I would ask all of them in heaven, and I bet all of them would say, yeah, that was a blessing to be beat for the glory of God. And sitting on this side 2,000 years later, I'm like, that doesn't seem like a blessing at all to me, because we've kind of been not brainwashed, but kind of been taught this way of thinking that it's like, a good thing is only a blessing, or a good thing is only this. When in reality, a blessing can be a hardship. A blessing can be God bringing you through a season of trusting him and coming out stronger. Because when we make our goal solely, I want to learn to love Christ, I want to learn to submit to Christ first, then everything else kind of falls into line. And so God will bring us through seasons where it's hard and where it's tough. And that's a blessing.
Dude, real. In fact, we have to have our eyes on Jesus through it all to make it a blessing. And we'll always go through trials and tribulations. It'll always be hard. We'll always have things that might not seem like a blessing, but if we're with God through it all, it is a blessing. And so I had Psalms 34:8 that says, "Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him." And that, like, if we're sitting with God and we're dwelling in him, it doesn't matter what's going on around us, right? That is the blessing. And we can live in that blessing. And then I loved what you said about sometimes things that happen to us, they might not seem like a blessing, but they are. And I was thinking of when I got accepted into college, I didn't get accepted till the spring term. And I was like, that kind of sucks. Like, I want to go now. I want to start. And then months later, I ended up changing my career path in my brain. I wanted to be a vet. Now I'm wanting to be a pilot. It all changed. I would go and I get my pilot license in the fall. And it was a total blessing. In the moment, I didn't see it that way. And I saw it as a hindrance or something holding me back. But in the long run, it was a blessing. So sometimes we just don't see like the blessing that God is giving you until it works itself out. So,
yeah, I think just the holding on to God through trials and tribulations, it kind of changes the way you think. So when we have everything, or when God gives us good things, it's easy to like be comfortable. It's easy to sit down and not to chase after him as hard, But in the bad times, I feel like it's a lot easier, in my opinion, to say, I have nothing, all I have is you, Lord. And that kind of strength and that kind of soul focus being on God that is kind of where he wants us sometimes, of getting back to all I have is you.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I agree with that. Another thing I had on blessing, I was just turning to, is Acts 20:35. It says, "In all things I have shown you that by working hard in this way, we must help the weak and remember the words of the Lord Jesus, how he himself said," and this is in red, "it is more blessed to give than to receive." And I think when we're dwelling in this blessing of Jesus, we have this heart of, I want to do things for others. And when we do this, it in turn blesses us and brings us joy. Like when I get to help somebody out or show them Jesus' love, it literally fills me up. Like it feels good to do so, right? And it's this blessing of dwelling in Jesus, because that's his heart. He wants to help. He loves humanity. He loves everybody on this earth, and he wants to bless them. And so I think when we in turn take that heart posture and bless others, we get to feel that blessing and joy of fulfillment in that, because we're walking in how God has led us to do. So,
And that kind of goes back to having the mind and the heart of God and changing your thoughts and your actions to model that of what Christ is trying to do on the earth. And so when we make ourselves available to be a blessing to others, it's kind of a reciprocal thing where it comes straight back to us, because that's how the kingdom of God works. It's weird, but when you pour out yourself to others, you're going to get stuff in return. And it's not always going to be good things, but it's going to be joy. It's going to be peace. It's going to be the fruits of the Spirit. And I always have this just gratitude after I am able to serve somebody or like help somebody out. It gives me just this heart of gratitude, and it changes your heart posture to say, okay, this is what really matters, not necessarily whatever's going on in my life right now, but helping others. You kind of get this like joy of the Lord that just gets put in you by serving others and being a blessing to others. And so that kind of goes like right along with a blessing being a good thing, though. Like we can be a blessing to others. And so when we stop trying to look on the what can I get from God, and instead of that being like, what can I do for other people? How can I be a blessing for other people? We start to kind of operate in that mind and that heart. I think that is also a blessing from God, is like taking your eyes off of what can I get rather than what can I do to help somebody else.
dude, that was good. I agree with that 100%. And then the last thing I have on blessing is the fact, when I think of blessing, sometimes I think we picture this big, great things that happen to us, or what about this and this in my life? And we miss the simple blessing of life itself and like the chances. Like if you think God could have made anybody else in your spot, right? The chances of it all coming together and you being here in the situation you're in. And some people would be like, well, what about all these bad things going on? But think about all the good things that we're overlooking, right? Literally, the gift of life itself is a blessing. Like you're on this earth, you get to look around at the trees, you get to breathe in the air, you get to, what about all the wonderful foods, the friends, like whatever it is that you have in your life, they're blessings that we just overlook, the simple things. Life, my dog, me and you doing a podcast, like these simple things of blessings that we overlook. I think we need to simplify it down and like take it all in. So
Yeah, I really like what you just said. I think that when you simplify your thoughts to be on Christ alone and realize the simplicity of the gospel of I've been given grace, how can I give grace to others, or how can I look at life with grace, Because, I mean, ministry is a blessing, but at the end of the day, we got to be thankful for God, what he did in our lives, and we got to understand the blessings that he gives us. That's something that I pray from time to time, is like, God, thank you for the blessings that I don't recognize or that I don't praise you for because I overlook them. I mean, I love that because it's so easy to overlook getting up in the morning. It's so easy to overlook all these things that we do every day that's it's like you're so lucky to be able to do those things. Like not everybody gets to, you know, go to work and have a good life, or, you know, if you're having a hard time, like not everybody gets to cling to God when they're in a hard place, because not everybody knows God. And so that's our mission. I mean, how can we be a blessing? How can we look at the world differently? And I think when we start to recognize the little blessings in our life, it kind of helps us to be a blessing to others, because we realize how blessed we are. So that's all I have about being a blessing. You got anything else?
No, but yeah. So what is a blessing? I think the blessing is literally like Christ and everything that comes with it. So
Yep, realizing Christ is the ultimate blessing, and I think changing your heart and your mind to be one with what He wants on this earth. I think that's ultimately the goal of Christ. That's what a blessing is, and a blessing of this life is in of itself.
well,
We hope you had a great day. Hopefully we made your day a little bit better, and we'll see you next time.